Hi everyone, and welcome to our second video podcast. Our first video podcast about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, was received, I believe, favorably. We had a few hundred people who had watched it, and hopefully some of you are watching this one too. Well, the first one spoke mainly about the impact of COVID-19 on the field services segment. This one is something that really goes through the entire segment, regardless of pandemics and political crises and this, that, and the other thing. It's basically on the subject of communications. And as most of us know, communications is the key facet that helps to connect and interrelate the customer with its vendor. And by the vendor, we're talking about the service technicians or the field technicians, the dispatchers, the salespeople, whomever the customer has contact with. So communications are very important, paramount in the overall customer relationship management or CRM discipline. And what we wanted to do is to help service organizations to understand how they can better communicate with customers. And it's a two-way process. You communicate with them, they communicate with you. So what we've done years ago, we developed what we call the LOTS approach to building customer relationships. LOTS being LOTS, or listen, observe, think, and speak. It's something that's helped me personally because too often I speak before I think. And if you don't believe me, you can ask my wife. She'll verify that. So the key thing is to remember that while you're fixing the equipment, or while your company and its technicians are fixing the equipment, you're also fixing the customer, because the customer doesn't know whether the equipment's going to be down for a long time, whether it's going to interrupt production or throughput, whether if it does interrupt throughput, if it's going to be very costly or just a minimal cost. And they get anxious, and rightfully so, while your field tech is on site or while you're trying to fix it remotely. So most of the LOTS focus deals with when the service technician is on site at the customer facility. So the first thing obviously is listen. When you walk in, the customer is going to want to tell you everything that he or she can about here's the problem. We were right in the middle of a production run and the system failed, and we were producing milk and dairy products, and we had to dispose of thousands of dollars of worth of beverages or food, or just something simple as a copy machine that goes down. It went down, and we missed a production run. We couldn't get something to our client in time, and et cetera and so forth. So they're going to want to tell you the whole story. Do you need to listen to the whole story? Probably not. But when push comes to shove, what you'll probably do is listen to a little bit more than you would have normally, just to get the customer to feel comfortable with the service technician while the technician is there. They'll explain it in their own words, in their own terms, and they're going to try to help you to understand what happened. Now, while you're listening to them, you can prompt them to start talking a little bit more about what you need to hear from them, which is what were the circumstances just before the system failed? Has this ever happened before? How does it impact your, how does the downtime impact your productivity? What ramifications are going to be resultant from this downtime, et cetera and so forth. So you can ask them questions along the way. You can guide them or prompt them along the way. That's still part of listening. What it does also is it shows them that you are listening to them if in fact you want more clarification or more detail in some areas. So the thing is that this is the easiest thing to do. We can do it all the time. I know I've had a problem over the years with talking when I should be listening. Hopefully I've improved over the past decade or so. But what you need to do is listen to the customer. That will give you a sense of where the customer is, and it'll make it easier for you to, quote, fix the customer while you're fixing their equipment. Now, the second step in the LOTS approach is observe. And, sometimes the customer gets it right, sometimes the customer gets it wrong. But the customer always thinks that he or she is right. And that's the reality that you've got to live with. But by observing the customer, you can determine his or her exact state of mind with respect to what, or more appropriately, whom you're going to be dealing with. Is this the person who manages the system or the equipment that you're there to service? Or is this a technician who doesn't manage it? He or she reports to a manager who has responsibility over a number of units, etc., and so forth. So by observing things like titles, demeanor, tone, etc., and so forth, you'll have a better understanding of who you're dealing with and if you're dealing with the right person. Now, also by observation, what we mean is you can see the environment in which the system or the piece of equipment is operating. If it's a piece of equipment that needs to operate in a climate that does not approach 80 degrees or so, and it's 85 degrees in the computer room or in the facility, it could be a chronic situation. It could be a temporary situation where just the air conditioner system went down for several hours and is being repaired. But by observing the conditions around the equipment and around the customer, you'll be able to connect the dots between what you're hearing from the customer, and what you're seeing from the customer, and what you're seeing around the customer and around the equipment. And then the next thing, of course, is to think, what does this all mean? And most of the service technicians that you've got supporting customers have been doing this for a number of years, or at least for a number of months, and they can understand what they're dealing with. So it's a matter of processing all the information that you've heard and that you've observed into a manageable mass of knowledge that allows you to come up with possible root causes or situations that led to the system failure, as well as possible fixes. Might be just as simple as replacing a part, swapping it out. It might be more complicated, but between what you hear from the customers, what you observe from the surroundings, and what you see when you take a look at and open up the equipment, look inside, you'll be able to assess the situation and see what happens next. And what happens next, of course, is the customer, some of them are going to just walk back to their desks and get back to work. Others are going to hover around you. There'll be helicopter customers hovering around you while you're working. That's not a pleasant situation to have to deal with. But, while you're doing the repair, performing the fix, you can also perform the fix with the customer and say, oh, I see what it is. This shouldn't take too long to repair. Or, in the opposite end of the spectrum, this is going to take several hours, or I may have to come back later, or whatever. At least you will have thought it out. You will have processed it in your own mind. And then the key thing is to, whether it's good news or bad news, to communicate with the customer and let them know exactly what the situation is. You set their expectations, you set the bar, and then you've got to honor it. So, basically, when a service technician walks into a customer site, the first word that he or she says, first things they say to the customer, are probably going to be what defines the overall service call. So you've got to do that LOTS approach even before you enter the site. Once you enter the site, you've got to do it all over again, but you've got new information to process. Is this a panacea for everything? Is this going to make every call a good call? No, it's not. But it's going to make every good call a great call, and it's going to make every average call a good call. And in many circumstances, it'll take what could have been a bad call and turn it into at least an average call where nobody's upset. What we have here at Strategies for Growth and PollockOnService.com is we've written an ebook that contains the LOTS approach in it. We also have a subset of it just on the LOTS approach. And if this is something that your services organization thinks is of value and you want to distribute it to your internal service technicians or field force, we can work out an arrangement with you to do so. In any event, thanks so much. I thank you, and as you can see over my shoulders, the Beatles thank you. By the way, that's not my gold record. I'm not a rock star just yet. That's going to be my next career. But, keep in touch with us. So we'll keep in touch with you, and we'll continue doing these podcasts. So thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And until our next communications, keep your customers satisfied. Thanks very much. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.